Noah listened carefully to Talia. "But I want you to know something," Talia continued. "He's in the best care right now, the doctors are taking this seriously and we're going to figure out what's happening." Noah nodded. She reached across the table slightly. "And about the driver's license situation, don't worry about that." He looked at her. "Tate is going to be upset but we'll manage." She smiled faintly. "One good thing about having money is that there are options. He can take a taxi, use transportation services, or I can hire someone to drive him where he needs to go." Noah opened his mouth. "I wouldn't mind helping." Talia smiled. "I know you wouldn't." She paused. "But Tate is very independent, he wouldn't want you feeling like his chauffeur." Noah smiled slightly. "That sounds like him." "It is," Talia said. "He'll probably hate needing help more than anything else." She looked toward the ceiling, toward the floors above them where Tate was being monitored. "But for now, he'll have to accept that people love him enough to help." Noah sat quietly thinking about the man upstairs, the person who could be stubborn, difficult, funny, and impossible all at once. The person he had just been terrified of losing. An hour later, Talia and Noah returned upstairs to the waiting area near Dr. Coleman's office. As they approached, they could hear raised voices behind the closed door. Noah slowed down. "That doesn't sound good." Before Talia could answer, the office door opened with a sharp pull. Terrence stepped out. He did not look happy. His jaw was tight and the exhausted expression on his face told them the conversation had taken far longer and gone much worse than he had expected. Talia approached carefully and sat beside him in one of the hospital chairs. "Honey." Terrence jumped slightly. "Please don't do that," he said, rubbing his forehead. "Please don't sneak up on me." Talia softened immediately. "I'm sorry, dear." She sat beside him. "What did the doctor say?" Terrence let out a long breath. "I spent 45 minutes listening to the doctor explain everything that happened. The ambulance, the ICU, and what occurred after Tate was moved into his room. Our son did some inappropriate conduct, bit several people, not to mention exposed himself to 3 nurses." Noah stood nearby, listening quietly. Terrence shook his head. He was very thorough. Talia studied his face. "You don't look relieved." "I'm not," Terrence admitted. He leaned back in the chair. "I had to hear things no parent wants to hear about their child." A moment of silence passed. "I made a sizable donation to the hospital," Terrence continued. "I wanted to make sure Tate's care wasn't complicated by misunderstandings or unnecessary legal barriers." Talia looked at him. "Terrence." "I know," he said, "but right now my priority is making sure our son gets treated properly." He rubbed his temples. "It wasn't cheap and I still had to fill out a mountain of paperwork afterward." He gave a tired sigh. "Now I have a migraine." Talia reached over and touched his arm. "I'm sorry." Terrence looked at her and finally managed a small smile. "How was your lunch?" Talia laughed softly. "Honestly, better than expected." Noah smiled. Terrence shook his head. "Good, at least someone had a decent meal today." For a brief moment, despite the fear and exhaustion surrounding them, they shared a small piece of normal life. Then all 3 looked toward the ICU doors again, remembering why they were there. Noah drove Tate home a few days later. The doctors had been clear that there were no lingering complications and thankfully Tate didn't have any more seizures. Physically, he seemed fine. Almost too fine. For the next week, Tate acted as if nothing had happened. He returned to his usual routine, making sarcastic comments, complaining about trivial things, and avoiding any conversation related to the hospital. No one noticed. Every time he looked at Tate, he saw the same person who would pretend he didn't need anyone. The same person who would rather joke, get angry, or walk away than admit he was scared. At first, Noah let it go. He told himself Tate needed time. He didn't want to corner him or make him feel trapped. He knew Tate hated feeling like people were watching him, waiting for him to break. But by Saturday, Noah had reached his limit. Tate was sitting on the couch, casually flipping through the television channels, acting completely unaffected. Noah stood in the doorway for a moment, watching him. "You're really going to do this?" Noah finally asked. Tate glanced over. "Do what?" Pretend nothing happened. Tate rolled his eyes. Nothing did happen, I had a seizure, the doctors checked me, I'm fine. No, Noah said quietly, you're not. Tate's expression hardened immediately, don't start. I'm telling you, I watched you collapse, confused. I saw everyone panic and then you came home expecting us to just forget it. That's because there's nothing to talk about. Noah shook his head, that's not true, Tate. Tate looked away. Noah walked closer, lowering his voice. You scare people when you act like you don't care, because sometimes I think you're not pretending, I think you actually believe you're not allowed to need anyone. Tate's jaw tightened. For a moment neither of them spoke. I need to talk about Uncle Joey, Noah said. Tate's entire body stiffened, his jaw clenched and he stared straight ahead. Fine, he said, talk about it, just leave me out of it. Noah shook his head, no, Tate. Tate looked over, already irritated. What do you mean no? I mean I can't keep doing this, it's becoming a wall between us, you and me. Tate's expression shifted slightly, but he didn't respond. I can't talk about the things I'm going through right now because you won't talk about it, Noah continued. I'm grieving too, I lost someone too, and every time I try to bring him up you shut down or push me away. Tate looked away. I've gone to Uncle Tim because nobody seems to want to talk about it, Noah said quietly. That got a reaction. Tate's eyes snapped back toward him, his face tightening. You went to Uncle Tim. Noah sighed, Tate. No, I heard you. You can't be angry at me for that. Tate looked frustrated, almost hurt. I'm not. Yes, you are, Noah said, but you don't get to be angry because I went to someone else when you wouldn't let me talk to you. Tate's jaw flexed again. I need people, Noah continued. I need somewhere to put all of this. I need to be able to say Joey's name. I need to be able to remember him without feeling like I'm hurting you. Tate's face softened for a second, but he quickly covered it. I just don't want to talk about it. I know. Then why are you forcing this? Because it's not just about Joey anymore, Noah said, it's about us. Tate went quiet. You're making this thing we can't touch, Noah said. And it's getting bigger every day. I feel like I have to choose between loving you and grieving someone who mattered to me. Tate swallowed hard. I'm not asking you to fall apart, Noah said. I'm not asking you to have some big emotional conversation if you're not ready, but I need you to understand that shutting me out isn't the answer. Tate stared at the floor. I don't know how to do this, he finally admitted, barely above a whisper. Noah's expression softened. I know. Tate rubbed his hands together, uncomfortable with the vulnerability. When I talk about him, it feels like I'm admitting he's gone, Tate said. Noah looked at him. And if I don't talk about him, Tate continued, then for a little while it feels like he's still here. Noah sat quietly beside him. Tate, he said gently, you don't have to forget him to survive losing him. Tate didn't answer. But this time he didn't tell Noah to stop talking. I'm not asking you to forgive him, Noah said. Tate looked up, surprised by the words. You don't have to forgive Joey, Noah continued. I'm not asking you to pretend nothing happened. I'm not asking you to suddenly be okay with everything. Tate stayed quiet, listening. But if you allow whatever this is to poison what we have, then it's going to become bigger than just Joey, Noah said. And that scares me. Tate's face tightened. Because your anger, your silence, your refusal to talk about it, eventually it's going to poison my memories of him too, and I don't want that. The words landed harder than Tate expected. Noah looked down for a moment before continuing. I love you, Tate, you know I do, but I can't live in a house where someone I love is treated like a subject we're not allowed to mention. Tate stared at him, his expression unreadable. Maybe we need to rethink you living here. The room went completely still. Tate's eyes narrowed slightly. But Noah didn't look away. Since you don't want to talk about it, maybe you need some space, Noah said. Maybe moving out is what needs to happen. Tate opened his mouth, but nothing came out. I've tried talking to my friends, Noah continued. I've tried, especially Andrew. At the mention of Andrew, Tate looked away. Andrew doesn't want to talk about it either, Noah said. And I understand why. He was probably the closest to Joey before he died. Maybe it hurts too much for him. Noah's voice cracked slightly. But that leaves me with nobody. Tate's expression changed just slightly. I'm carrying this around all the time, Noah said. And I'm tired of pretending I'm okay when I'm not. I don't want to have to fake it around everyone just because nobody wants to say his name. Tate swallowed. I don't want to lose you, Noah said. But I also don't want to lose myself trying to protect you from a conversation you refuse to have. Tate looked down at the floor. And honestly, Noah added quietly, if you can't talk about it and you keep letting it control our relationship, maybe you do need to move out. A long silence followed. Maybe Mark can move in, Noah said. That was the one thing that made Tate look up. Mark. Noah nodded. I'm not replacing you, Noah said quickly. That's not what this is about. This is about needing peace in my own home, needing a place where I can grieve without feeling like I'm betraying you. Tate sat there absorbing every word. For once, he didn't have an argument ready. Because underneath the anger, underneath the defensiveness, he knew Noah wasn't threatening him. He was telling him he was hurting. And Tate didn't know how to fix that. Noah stood up slowly and grabbed his drink. I'm done, he said. Tate looked up, caught off guard by the finality in Noah's voice. I'm done with the jealousy, obsession, and double standards with you and within our relationship. I'm done with your gunshots outside this house. Tate's face hardened, but Noah didn't stop. If you don't want me to have other people in my life, then you can't be in it either, Tate blew. The words hit harder than Noah intended, but he meant every one of them. I need people, Noah continued. I need friends, I need family, I need people I can talk to. You don't get to shut every door around me because you don't want to open one yourself. Tate stayed silent. Maybe you need to pack your bags, Noah said. Your boxes, whatever it is you need to pack, because I'm done walking on eggshells in my own house. Tate looked away. You're only in this house because you're a blessing in my life, Noah said, his voice lowering. That's the truth. I love having you here. I love you. Tate's expression flickered. But when you stop being a blessing and start making me wish I lived somewhere else just so I could grieve in peace, then something has to change. The room was silent. So figure it out, Noah said, because tomorrow morning at breakfast I need an answer. Tate looked back at him. I'm either waking up and you're still living here and we're going to start figuring this out together. Noah paused. Or that's gone. Tate's eyes widened slightly at the finality. I'm going to bed. Noah turned and walked toward the stairs. For once, Tate didn't make a joke. He didn't throw out an insult. He didn't tell Noah he was being dramatic. He just watched him leave. A few moments later, Noah's bedroom door slammed shut upstairs. The sound echoed through the house. And Tate sat alone in the quiet, staring at the empty space where Noah had been standing, realizing that for the first time, Noah wasn't threatening to leave. He was setting a boundary. And Tate had no idea what he was going to do when morning came. At 9 o'clock, Tate finally made his way upstairs. The house was completely quiet, every light was off except the faint glow from the hallway. He stopped outside Noah's bedroom door, staring at it for a moment. Noah. No answer. Tate reached for the doorknob and turned it. Click. The knob moved, but the door didn't open. His eyebrows pulled together. He tried again. Click, click. Still nothing. No, Tate called, his voice softer this time. Open up. Silence. Tate waited. Nothing. He pressed his ear closer to the door, listening. No movement. No footsteps. No television. No sound of Noah moving around the room. No, Tate said again, please open up. The quiet started to bother him. Usually, even when Noah was angry, even when he needed space, Tate could tell he was there. He could hear him moving around, sighing, doing something to let him know he was okay. But now there was nothing. Tate backed away slightly, his stomach tightening. Noah. Still nothing. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small skeleton key. He hesitated before putting it into the lock. He didn't like doing this. He knew Noah had locked the door for a reason. But the silence was getting worse. The key turned. Nothing happened. Tate frowned and tried again, adjusting the angle. The lock didn't move. What? He tried once more. Still nothing. The door remained shut. For the first time all night, Tate stopped being angry. The argument, the fight, the words about moving out, all of it faded for a moment. Because Noah wasn't answering. And Tate realized he wasn't standing outside a locked door because Noah was punishing him. He was standing outside because he didn't know if Noah was okay. Tate rested his forehead against the door. "Noah," he whispered. His voice cracked slightly. "Please just say something." Every other time Noah had locked Tate out of the bedroom, it had ended the same way. Tate would rattle the doorknob. Noah would sigh from the other side. "Go to bed, Tate." Sometimes it was irritated. Sometimes it was amused. Sometimes it was affectionate despite the frustration. But Noah always answered. "Tonight." Nothing. Noah had made up his mind. For once, he wasn't going to rescue Tate from the consequences of his own behavior. He wasn't going to unlock the door after 5 minutes. He wasn't going to reassure him that everything was okay. He was keeping the boundary he'd set downstairs. And Tate was simply going to have to live with it. Tate stood outside the bedroom, one hand resting on the doorknob. "No," he whispered. Silence. His throat tightened. He knocked once more, much more gently this time. I don't want to sleep by myself." "Nothing." The silence hurt more than being yelled at. His breathing became uneven. He sniffled, trying to force the tears back, but they came anyway. Hot tears rolled down his cheeks. He wiped at them angrily, only for more to replace them. "I hate this," he whispered to himself. Another tear slipped down. Then another. Before he realized it, his shoulders began to shake. A quiet sob escaped his chest. He covered his mouth with his hand, embarrassed even though no one could see him. "I don't want to sleep alone," he cried, his voice breaking. The hallway remained still. Behind the bedroom door, Noah heard every word. His heart ached. Every instinct told him to get up, unlock the door, wrap Tate in his arms, and tell him everything would be okay. But he stayed exactly where he was. Not because he didn't love Tate. Because he did. Enough to know that comforting him now would undo everything Noah had finally found the courage to say. Love didn't always mean opening the door. Sometimes love meant keeping it closed. Outside, Tate slowly slid down the wall until he was sitting on the floor with his knees pulled to his chest. He buried his face in his arms and cried like he hadn't cried in years. Not because he was angry anymore. Because for the first time since Joey died, he realized that if he kept pushing away the people who loved him, he might wake up one day and find himself completely alone. And that thought terrified him far more than sleeping by himself ever could. Noah woke the next morning to the familiar silence of the house. For a few seconds he stayed where he was, staring at the ceiling. Then he smiled to himself. He already knew what he expected to find. Tate. If there was one thing Noah could count on, it was that Tate usually got what he wanted. Locked door. That had never stopped him before. There had been nights when Noah had locked him out after an argument, only to wake up and find Tate somehow asleep on top of the blankets, curled against him as if nothing had happened. Once, Tate had actually taken the bedroom door off its hinges. Another time, he'd climbed through the bedroom window just because he had decided the lock was a stupid idea. Boundaries had always been more of a puzzle than a rule to Tate. Noah had almost expected to wake up with Tate sprawled across his legs, proudly announcing that a locked door had never defeated him before. But this morning, nothing. No warm weight against his side. No arm draped across his chest. No boots were tossed carelessly onto the floor. No sarcastic morning Noe. No Tate. The other side of the bed was untouched. Noah sat up slowly. His smile disappeared. That's unusual. He looked toward the bedroom door. It was still locked. Exactly as he'd left it. A knot formed in his stomach. He unlocked the door and stepped into the hallway. Tate. No answer. The hallway was empty. He glanced toward the spot outside his bedroom where he'd half expected to find Tate asleep against the wall after crying himself out. There was no one there. Only a faint impression in the carpet where someone had apparently sat for a long time during the night. Noah's chest tightened. Tate. Still nothing. He walked downstairs, the house eerily quiet. For the first time since he'd met Tate, Noah wasn't irritated that Tate had ignored a boundary. He was unsettled because Tate had actually respected one. And somehow, that frightened him more than a door with its hinges removed ever had. Noah went downstairs and quietly filled the kettle. The house felt strangely unfamiliar. Usually, there would already be the smell of coffee brewing. Tate always beat him downstairs, grumbling the entire time while making a pot strong enough to wake the dead, as he liked to say. Today, Noah ignored the coffee maker. Instead, he steeped a mug of tea and sat alone at the kitchen table, wrapping both hands around the warm cup. 20 minutes passed before he heard footsteps. Tate came downstairs wearing nothing but a pair of pajama pants. His hair was a mess, his eyes were swollen, and there were faint dark circles beneath them. He looked like he hadn't slept much. Neither of them spoke. Tate's eyes drifted across the kitchen. The empty coffee pot. The untouched coffee grounds. Then Noah's mug. Tea. That was when Tate realized something was wrong. Without saying a word, he walked over to the coffee maker and pressed the power button. The machine hummed to life. Only then did Noah speak. So. His voice was calm, almost too calm. When are you moving out? Tate froze. His hand remained resting on the coffee maker. The familiar humming suddenly seemed deafening. He slowly turned around. What? You heard me. The question wasn't shouted. It wasn't said in anger. That somehow made it hurt more. When are you moving out? Noah repeated. Tate stared at him for several long seconds. I don't want to move out. No, Noah replied. You said you didn't want to talk about Joey either, but here we are. Tate lowered his eyes. Noah took a slow sip of his tea. I told you last night to figure it out. I know. So I'm asking. Tate swallowed hard. I don't want to leave. No, Noah said softly, but wanting to stay isn't enough anymore. The coffee maker finished brewing with a soft beep. Neither of them moved to pour a cup. For the first time since they'd lived together, the smell of fresh coffee wasn't comforting. It only reminded them how different this morning felt from every other one. Noah stood, rinsed out his teacup, and set it carefully in the sink. Without looking at Tate, he picked up his truck keys from the counter. I'll be out until 6 o'clock this evening, he said evenly. By the time I get back, one of two things needs to have happened. Tate didn't move. Either you'll be gone. Noah paused. Or we'll sit down and have the conversation you've been avoiding. He started toward the front door. No. Noah stopped but didn't turn around. I don't want to have a discussion later, Tate said, his voice suddenly louder. I want to have it now. Noah closed his eyes for a brief moment. Tate. No, Tate shouted, making Noah turn around. Not tonight, not in 6 hours now. His voice cracked. I spent all night sitting outside your door. Noah's expression softened, but he remained silent. I cried, Tate admitted, wiping angrily at his face as if the memory embarrassed him. I hated every second of it. Noah said nothing. I thought you were going to open the door, Tate laughed bitterly. You always open the door. I know. But you didn't. No. Tate's breathing was uneven. I thought maybe you'd come out eventually. I almost did. That answer surprised Tate. You did. Noah nodded once. I stood on the other side of the door more than once with my hand on the lock. Tate stared at him. But if I'd opened it, nothing would have changed. The words hung in the air. I can't keep rescuing you from conversations you don't want to have, Noah said quietly, because every time I do, we end up right back here. Tate lowered his head. So, Noah said. You wanted to talk now. He pulled out one of the kitchen chairs and sat back down. Fine. He folded his hands on the table. I'm listening. The room was silent. For the first time since Joey died, Tate had asked for the conversation instead of running from it. Now that Noah was finally ready to listen, Tate realized he had no idea where to begin. You know what, Tate, Noah said quietly, would be real karma for you. Tate looked up. Noah leaned back in his chair. All this time you've been avoiding me, you've made me feel like what I'm going through isn't important to you, or worse, that it's just inconvenient. Tate lowered his eyes. And now, Noah continued, The moment you decide you want to talk, I could do exactly what you've been doing to me. Noah shrugged. I could make myself scarce, I could avoid you, I could tell you I don't want to hear it, and I could walk out the front door and let you feel exactly what I've been feeling for the last week. Tate's face tightened. And you deserve it. The words hung heavily between them. But someone has to be an adult in this house. Noah's voice wasn't angry anymore. It was tired. And it's never you, Tate. Tate swallowed. So I'm going to sit right here. Noah rested his forearms on the kitchen table. I'm going to listen. He looked directly into Tate's eyes. I'm going to give you the one thing you haven't been willing to give me. Silence filled the room. And then, Noah paused. I'm going to decide what to do next, and if I even care what you've said. Tate's breathing caught. I'm not asking you to perform, Noah said. I'm not asking you to say the perfect thing, but I do need to know whether you're finally willing to let me into the part of your life you've been keeping locked away. He held Tate's gaze. So, Noah said softly, convince me. Tate stood motionless. The challenge wasn't to prove he loved Noah. Neither of them doubted that. The challenge was to prove he trusted Noah enough to let him see the grief he'd been hiding. For the first time in a very long time, Tate understood that saying nothing was no longer an option. If Tate wanted to stay, he had to start talking. Tate stared at the table for what felt like an eternity. Noah didn't interrupt. He had asked Tate to talk. Now he was going to let him. Finally Tate spoke. Jealousy. Noah's eyebrows lifted slightly. Tate paused again, swallowing hard before forcing the words out. I hate my uncle, he refused to say Joey's name. The omission didn't go unnoticed. I hate my uncle because, Tate took a shaky breath, because I was jealous. I am jealous even now whenever his name comes up in conversation. Noah remained perfectly still. He tried to take you away from me. His voice cracked. He almost succeeded. Noah blinked surprised. Tate laughed bitterly. You spent years writing him letters. Noah's expression softened. I watched you sit there for hours, writing page after page, and I never knew who you were. I thought it might have been many people, friends, family, people who didn't know, especially when we were at Brown. When I found out it was my uncle to whom you were corresponding during one of our fights, I lost my temper and tore his letters, because I was worried that he was becoming more emotionally important to you than I ever had been. Tate shook his head. And he never sent those gifts or letters as often to me as he did for you. His jaw tightened. If he did, he scoffed, it was the shortest letter possible, a paragraph, maybe 2 months apart. Another silence. He loved you more than he ever loved me. The sentence came out barely above a whisper. I know that's selfish and childish, but every time his name came up. He looked away. I hated it. Noah's heart sank. Tate. No, Tate held up a hand. You said you wanted honesty. Noah nodded once. So here's honesty. Tate rubbed at his eyes. I was jealous of his influence over you. How happy he sounded when he talked about you, that he smiled when your letters arrived, and that you got the version of him that I always wanted. His voice broke. And I couldn't compete with that. Noah felt his throat tighten. I thought, Tate whispered, if he loved you that much, maybe there just wasn't enough left for me. The kitchen was silent except for Tate's uneven breathing. So yeah. He gave a hollow laugh. I'm jealous. And maybe the only way I can get one over on him now. He shrugged bitterly. Is to hate him from the grave. Another humorless smile. And spend his inheritance on hookers. For a moment, Noah simply stared at him. Then he let out the smallest, most disbelieving exhale. You've been carrying that around by yourself. Tate nodded once. Noah leaned back in his chair, his anger melting into heartbreak. Oh, Tate. His voice was full of sadness. You thought I was something he chose instead of you. Tate couldn't meet his eyes. I wasn't. Noah shook his head slowly. I never knew you felt that way. How could you not? Tate asked, his voice cracking. It was obvious to me. No, Noah replied gently, it wasn't. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. I wrote Joey because he was a lonely bachelor. He knew you best of all, Tate, and what I didn't understand about you or was going on between us usually during our fights was when I would ask him how to help, and he would advise me not to push or corner you. A lot of his advice actually helped minimize repercussions or damage to our relationship. Tate looked up. I loved him because he was your family. Noah's eyes filled with tears. But I came home to you. The words landed like a blow. I wasn't trying to replace you because I never could. Noah's voice trembled. Tate, there isn't a world where I would have chosen Joey over you. Tate's lips quivered. I loved your uncle, Tate. Noah paused. But I love you most of all, and if you think for one moment I emotionally cheated on you or took all of my sentiment towards you and gave it to him, you couldn't be further from the truth. The room fell silent. And those aren't two loves that were ever competing with each other. For the first time since the conversation began, Tate looked directly at Noah. The certainty in Noah's face left no room for doubt. It was the first crack in the wall Tate had built since Joey's death. Noah smiled sadly, shaking his head. Tate, if I could only have one person in my life, if we were stranded on some remote island and I could only choose one person to be there with me, I would choose you. Tate looked up, startled. Every single time. Noah's voice was calm and certain. There wouldn't even be a decision to make. Tate's eyes began to glisten. And maybe, Noah admitted with a faint, almost embarrassed smile, I had a little bit of sentiment toward Joey. He laughed softly through his emotion. A lot of sentiment, if I'm being honest. Tate stayed quiet, listening. But do you know why? He didn't wait for an answer. Because he reminded me of you. Tate frowned. He was a carbon copy of you in so many ways, the same dry sense of humor, the same stubborn streak, his facial features and physical appearance, the same way he'd pretend he didn't care when he cared more than anyone else in the room. Noah smiled at the memories. How could I not care about someone who reminded me so much of the buddy I love? Tate's expression softened. And Noah rubbed the back of his neck, looking slightly sheepish. When we were younger, before you and I became close. He chuckled. I might have had a tiny crush on him. Tate blinked. A tiny one, he asked. Noah laughed. Fine, maybe not so tiny. For the first time that morning, the corner of Tate's mouth twitched. Noah smiled back. But it didn't last. Why not? Tate asked quietly. Because once I got to know him, he stopped being someone I had a crush on and became family. Noah reached across the table, leaving his hand there without forcing Tate to take it. And besides, his eyes met Tate's. I already knew what kind of person I was drawn to. Tate looked at him questioningly. You. Noah's smile was warm. So of course there were things about Joey that I appreciated. They were some of the same qualities I love in you. He squeezed Tate's hand after Tate finally let him take it. But they were never the same person. Noah's expression turned serious again. I never loved Joey instead of you. He gave Tate's hand another gentle squeeze. I loved Joey because he was your uncle, and because he became an important part of my life. Then he smiled with quiet certainty. But I love you because you're the person I chose to build my life with. Tate looked down at their joined hands. So you were never competing with him, Noah said softly. The only person who thought there was a competition was you. A tear slid down Tate's cheek. This time he didn't wipe it away. Tate was quiet for several moments. Noah thought he had finally reached him. Then Tate asked, almost too quietly to hear. And Mark? Noah blinked. What about him? Tate's jaw tightened. Do you love him more than you love me? The question hung in the air. Noah hadn't seen it coming. For a moment he simply stared at Tate, realizing that this wasn't really about Mark. It had never been. Mark had become the living target for every fear Tate carried. Joey had been the one Tate believed had taken Noah's attention in the past. Mark was the one Tate feared would take it now. Noah let out a slow breath. Tate. No, Tate interrupted, answer me. His voice shook despite his attempt to sound angry. You spend time with him, you laugh with him, you invite him over, you tell him things, you defend him. Tate looked away. And every time you do, he swallowed, I hear that same voice in my head. Noah's expression softened. What voice? The one that says, Tate hesitated, ashamed of the words, here we go again, someone else is more important than you. Noah felt his heart break. He stood, walked around the table, and crouched beside Tate instead of answering from across the room. Noah took a slow breath before he answered. Tate, I've never asked you who you've slept with. Tate frowned. I've never questioned the people you've cared about. I've never demanded explanations about every person who's been important to you. He held Tate's gaze. I've never walked into parts of your life where I wasn't invited. The room fell quiet. Have I ever asked you about the women who shared your bed before we met? Tate shook his head. No. Have I ever demanded to know what you felt for them? No. No, Noah agreed, I haven't. He folded his hands together on the table. So what I feel or don't feel about Mark is my own business. Tate started to speak, but Noah gently raised a hand. You asked me if I loved Mark more than you. Noah met Tate's eyes. Let me ask you something, in the 8 years since I met Mark, where have I slept every night? Tate didn't answer. Have I slept in Mark's bed? Noah shook his head. No. Have I had my mail delivered to his address? Tate stared at Noah. No, Noah sighed. Do I cook in his kitchen? Tate slowly shook his head. No. I cook here, Noah said, gesturing around the house, in my home. His voice softened. And because we've been close since we were kids, I opened that home to you. I wanted you here. He paused. I welcome you into my life the same way I welcome the other people I care about. I don't believe the people I love have to compete with each other. Tate listened without interrupting. I don't like creating a hierarchy among the people I'm close to, Noah continued. The people I love aren't standing on a podium fighting over first, second, and third place. He smiled faintly. You're important to me because you're you. And yes, we've shared 14 years of history before I met our friends at Brown. We've grown up together, we've seen each other at our best and our worst. He nodded. That history matters, it gives our relationship a depth that simply takes time to build. Tate's shoulders relaxed slightly. But it isn't a contest. I'm not choosing between you and Mark, I'm not choosing between you and anyone. Noah leaned forward. I choose to live with you because I want to. I don't live with you because I have to or because someone expects me to. A small smile crossed his face. I live with you because I like waking up and knowing you're here. I like making dinner with you, hearing your ridiculous comments from the next room, and that you wander into the kitchen at midnight looking for something to eat. Tate's lips twitched despite himself. And I like that. If something wonderful happens or something terrible happens, you're the first person I want to tell. Noah's expression became more serious. That's the intimacy we've built over 22 years. It isn't based on ownership, keeping everyone else out, or choosing each other over and over again. He held Tate's gaze. I've been making that choice for a long time. My question is whether you're ready to stop competing with people who were never trying to take your place and start believing me when I tell you I've already chosen mine. He paused. But I'm not going to sit here and defend every friendship I've had for the last 8 years. His voice remained calm. It's been 8 years, Tate. I'm not running off with Mark. I'm not running off with anyone. Tate looked away. And if you honestly believe that I'd disappear in the middle of the night, Noah's expression became deeply hurt. Pack my boxes, leave this house, and never even say goodbye. He shook his head slowly. Then you really don't know me. Those words landed harder than anything else Noah had said that morning. You know me better than that. A long silence followed. I don't want to talk about Mark anymore unless it's to reminisce, make future plans that include him, or party with the rest of the friends I made in college. Tate looked back up. Because no matter what I tell you, you've already decided what the story is. Noah's voice was tired rather than angry. You've imagined conversations that never happened, feelings I never told you I had, and a romantic relationship that exists only in your head. He sighed. And honestly, he shrugged slightly. I don't care what you think happened between Mark and me. Tate flinched. What I choose to do in my romantic life, or what I choose not to do, isn't something you get to interrogate me about. He let that settle before continuing. You do have every right to ask me whether I'm committed to us. His tone softened. And I've answered that. I chose you, I've kept choosing you, and until yesterday I thought that was something you believed. Noah looked at Tate with a mixture of sadness and resolve. But if my commitment to you isn't enough and you need me to account for every friendship, every conversation, every person I've ever cared about. He slowly shook his head. That's not a relationship, that's a trial, and I'm not going to spend my life trying to prove my innocence every time your fear tells you I'm about to leave. The kitchen fell silent. For the first time, Tate realized Noah wasn't refusing to answer because he was hiding something. He was refusing because he was protecting a boundary. There was a difference. And until that morning, Tate had never understood it. Noah was quiet for a moment before he spoke. If I ever chose in the past or in the future to have a romantic or sexual relationship with Mark, with one of my friends, or even with someone I met tomorrow. He held Tate's gaze. That would be my business. Tate's expression tightened, but Noah continued. You're allowed to ask me if you think something is happening. You're allowed to have a conversation with me. Susie asks me things like that all the time because she cares and because she trusts that we'll talk honestly. He paused. Noah nodded slowly before continuing. Because we live together, I do make allowances. Tate looked up. For the fear, the panic, the jealousy, for both of us. Noah folded his hands on the table. I understand that if one day one of us gets married, it could bring up complicated feelings. Tate stayed quiet. Especially because we don't have a normal relationship or friendship. We share a home, we share routines, we've built a life together. He paused. So, if I told you someday that I was marrying someone, I would understand if part of you felt scared. Not because you don't want me to be happy, but because it would change our entire life. Tate's expression softened slightly. And I would probably have feelings too if your life changed in a major way. Noah gave a small shrug. That's human. Jealousy isn't automatically bad. Fear isn't automatically bad. Sometimes those feelings just mean someone or something matters to you. He looked directly at Tate. The difference is what we do with those feelings. We can't let fear turn into control, we can't let jealousy turn into resentment, and we can't decide someone else is the enemy just because we're afraid of losing what we have. Tate lowered his eyes. If you're happy for me and I'm happy for you. Noah smiled faintly. If we support each other while we both grow and change, then we can survive those things. We evolve, we adjust, we find a new way to be in each other's lives. He leaned back in his chair. But we don't try to destroy the relationship because someone else has found a place in our lives. Tate was silent. Healthy jealousy is saying, this change scares me because you matter. Noah's voice became softer. Unhealthy jealousy is saying, because I'm scared you aren't allowed to change. The words settled between them. And Tate. Noah reached across the table. I don't need you to never feel jealous. I need you to trust me enough to tell me you're jealous without trying to make me smaller. Tate looked at Noah's hand. For once, the conversation wasn't about who was being chosen over whom. It was about learning that love could expand without anyone being erased. But you chose a lane with me a long time ago when we were boys. Tate looked down. And that lane is platonic affection, history, loyalty, and the bond we've built over the years. Noah's voice stayed gentle but firm while he took a moment before answering, making sure Tate understood that this wasn't a punishment. It was a boundary. By choosing a lane, Noah said quietly, we have to respect the boundaries that come with that lane. Tate listened. We have to wish each other well, not just while we live together but even after we don't. He paused. Because one day our lives might look different, that doesn't erase what we've been to each other. Noah leaned back. I'm not going to interfere with your romantic relationships or your choices. I'm not going to question every person you care about. I'm not going to try to control who you love. His eyes met Tate's. And you have to offer me that same respect. Tate swallowed. We should be happy for each other, not because change is always easy, not because we won't miss things, but because loving someone means wanting their happiness even when life doesn't stay exactly the way it is now. Noah looked around the house. The hardest part might be accepting that some things could change. Maybe someday we won't live together. Maybe we don't see each other every morning. Maybe we don't share every small moment of the day. His voice softened. But whatever we lose from changing circumstances, your happiness matters more than my fear of losing something. Tate looked down. And my happiness should matter more than your fear, too. A long silence passed. You can't be jealous of romantic interactions that are outside the relationship we've chosen, Noah continued. Not because you aren't allowed to have feelings, but because those feelings belong to a different set of expectations. We have to remember what we are to each other. We can't ask for the freedoms of one relationship while demanding the protections of another. Tate nodded slowly. No matter how much we love each other, we can't confuse the boundaries we've created. Noah's expression softened. The answer isn't to love each other less, it's to love each other correctly. He squeezed Tate's hand. We chose friendship, deep friendship, family, history, loyalty, and if we truly value that, we protect it by respecting what it is. Tate sat quietly, absorbing the difference between losing his place in Noah's life and accepting that Noah's life could grow beyond the walls they had built together. For the first time, the idea didn't feel like abandonment. It felt like trust. I chose that lane with you too. I love you, I care about you, you're the most important person in my life, but don't confuse that love with anything beyond what we've shared. He took a breath. And I need you to do the same. Tate was silent. I don't create fantasies about your relationships that aren't about us, Noah continued. I don't build stories in my head about what someone else might be doing with you and then punish them for something I imagined. He shook his head. That's not fair to anyone. No matter who either of us chooses in the future, we owe each other respect. Tate looked back at him. If someday I decide I want a family with a woman or with anyone else I choose to build a life with. Noah paused. And if someday your life changes and you choose something different? He shrugged slightly. That doesn't mean everything we had disappears. It means we have a conversation, we sit down, we tell each other what we want, and then we respect it. His voice softened. We don't disappear in the middle of the night, we don't pack boxes and leave without saying goodbye, we don't turn love into punishment because life changed. Tate swallowed. We wish each other well. Noah smiled sadly. And we still find ways to be part of each other's lives. Maybe we can meet for coffee every few months. Maybe we can call when something important happens. Maybe we continue being the kind of friends we've always been. He looked around the kitchen. The foundation doesn't have to be destroyed just because the shape of something changes. Tate was quiet for a long time. Noah's words weren't an attack. They were a reminder. He wasn't telling Tate he mattered less. He was telling him that love didn't give either of them ownership over the other's future. And for Tate, that was perhaps the hardest thing to accept. Tate. Noah sighed softly. Sometimes I feel like we have the same arguments over and over again. Tate looked up at him. For a moment, he expected Noah to continue with anger. Instead, Noah just looked tired. I honestly feel like... He stopped. The words seemed harder to say than anything else. Noah looked down at the floor. I feel like I'm the only person who shows up emotionally. Tate's face changed. What? Noah didn't look up. I feel like I keep showing up, I keep having the conversations, I keep trying to understand what you're feeling, why you're hurt, why you're angry. His voice stayed quiet. I make room for your fear, I make room for your jealousy, I make room for the things you struggle to say. He swallowed. But sometimes I wonder where I get to put my feelings. Tate sat still. Because when I'm hurt or grieving or scared. Noah finally looked at him. Where do I go? The question hit harder than an accusation would have. You tell me you don't want to talk about it, you shut down, you get angry, you push me away. Noah shook his head. And then when you're ready, I'm expected to be right there, ready to hold everything you've been carrying. Tate opened his mouth but no words came. Noah. I love you, Noah said quickly, that's why I'm still sitting here. His eyes softened. But love can't only go one direction. Tate looked down. I can't be the person who understands you while you never try to understand me. The silence stretched. What do you want me to do? Tate asked quietly. Noah took a breath. I want you to show up. Tate looked at him. Not perfectly, not magically, not all at once. But I need to know that when something hurts me, you won't disappear. Noah's voice cracked slightly. I need to know that my grief matters too. Tate stared at the table. For once he didn't argue. Because he knew Noah wasn't saying he was tired of loving him. He was saying he was tired of loving alone. I think I need some time to myself. Tate immediately looked up. The words weren't angry. That made them worse. Noah took a breath, trying to find the right words. I feel like I'm. He stopped. He looked down, searching. I don't even know what the word is. Tate stayed quiet. The people I know ask me questions. Noah gave a small, humorless laugh. Questions I don't know how to answer. His voice became softer. I've never had the answer. I can't study for an exam when I don't even know what the answers are. Tate's expression changed. Noah. No, listen. Noah shook his head. You've always seemed like you had the answers, you knew what you felt, you knew what you wanted, you knew how to explain things. He looked at Tate. I've spent years trying to understand something I can't define. The silence was heavy. When Susie asks me questions about us. He swallowed. When Andrew asks me questions about us. Noah looked away. I don't know what to tell them. Tate's face tightened. I don't know what we're supposed to be. The honesty of it seemed to hurt both of them. And I've realized something. Noah leaned back in his chair. If I spend another 20 years waiting for an answer that never comes, I'm going to be in the exact same place. Tate stared at him. So maybe I need to create my own answer. Noah's voice trembled slightly. Not because I don't care about you. Not because what we have isn't real. But because I need something I can understand. He rubbed his hands together. I need to know where I stand in my own life. Tate looked down. I've spent so much time trying to protect what we have that I stopped asking whether what we have is actually working for me. The words were quiet. But they were honest. I love you, Tate. A pause. But I also need to know who I am when I'm not waiting for you to decide what this is. Tate looked like he wanted to argue. But there was nothing to argue against. Noah wasn't leaving. Not yet. He was asking for the one thing Tate had always struggled to give him. Space to exist outside of Tate's fear. I need some time, Noah repeated. And I need you to let me have it. I feel like I'm on a hamster wheel. Noah's voice was quiet, but the exhaustion behind it was impossible to miss. Just going around and ending up in the same place. Tate didn't say anything. I've come to a fork in the road. Noah looked at him. Either you genuinely don't know the answer. He paused. Or you do know and you're intentionally not telling me. Tate's expression changed. Noah. When I try to leave, Noah continued, you always find the words. The room became still. You can explain your feelings. You can explain your fears. You can explain why you need me to stay. His voice cracked slightly. You can tell me exactly why losing me scares you. Noah shook his head. But when I ask you to explain what this is, when I ask you what we are. He looked down. Suddenly there are no words. Tate opened his mouth. Noah held up a hand. And that's what hurts. He swallowed. Because it makes me feel like there is an answer, you just don't want to give it to me. Tate went quiet. And if that's the case. Noah looked away. Then that's the answer. The words landed heavily. You don't want to. Tate's face fell. That's the whole thing. Noah. When Susie asks why we have this relationship that doesn't look like anything she's ever seen before. He shook his head. I don't know what to tell her. His eyes filled with frustration and sadness. I don't know the answer. But I think you do. A long silence. And maybe I'm just not important enough for you to tell me. Tate looked like he had been physically hit. No, that's not. But Noah was already moving. He walked out of the living room before he said something he couldn't take back. Tate. The front door opened. Cold rain poured down outside. Noah stepped into it without grabbing a jacket. The rain soaked through his clothes almost immediately as he walked toward his car. Not running. Not storming away. Just walking. Trying to breathe. Trying to understand how two people could love each other so much and still leave each other feeling completely unseen. Tate. Tate followed him out of the Rambler. The rain fell between them as he stopped several feet away. For once, Tate wasn't chasing Noah because he was afraid of losing him. He was chasing him because he finally understood that Noah had been lost for a long time. And he hadn't noticed. Noah walked toward his car as the rain came down in sheets. It was pouring so hard that everything around him blurred. His clothes were soaked through, clinging to him, almost transparent against his skin. He wrapped his arms tighter around himself, not because he was cold but because he was trying to hold himself together. Halfway to his car, Noah stopped. The rain ran down his face, hiding everything. If it hadn't been raining, his tears would have been obvious. For 8 years Noah had wondered. Not demanded. Not forced. Just wondered. He would have given anything to know what was happening inside Tate's head. What he was thinking. What he was feeling. What he needed. What he was afraid to say. Noah had spent years accepting that Tate might never love him in the way other people expected love to look. He had made peace with that. He had told himself that the bond they shared was enough. That their history was enough. That choosing each other every day was enough. But what he had never been able to stop wondering was, what is Tate not telling me? What was the answer hidden behind all the arguments? What was the thing Tate couldn't put into words? Noah closed his eyes as the rain hit him. Then he heard it. Footsteps. Fast. Heavy. A moment later, he heard someone struggling to breathe behind him. Not walking. Running. Tate, Noah said quietly. He still didn't turn around. Tate breathed hard. You've always been fast. A pause. Always fast on your feet when you're upset. Tate stood there in the rain, breathing heavily. For once Noah had nothing to say. No argument. No defense. Just fear. Noah. Noah stared at his car. I'm sorry, Noe. The words were so quiet that Noah almost wondered if he imagined them. Tate swallowed. I'm sorry I made you feel like you were an imposter. Noah's shoulders stiffened. Or a placeholder. The rain drowned out the world around them. Tate looked down. Maybe you were before 1976. The second the words left his mouth, Tate looked like he wanted to take them back. He hated himself for saying them. Noah flinched. Not because the words were cruel. Because they confirmed the thing he had been afraid of. Tate's voice broke. Years ago. He stopped. His jaw tightened. I thought. He couldn't finish. No. Tate shook his head, disgusted with himself. I hate that I even thought that. Noah finally turned slightly. Tate looked devastated. I thought you were temporary. The confession barely made it past his lips. I thought eventually you would realize I wasn't enough and you would leave. Noah stared at him. And because I was so sure you would leave. Tate wiped his face, though the rain kept replacing every drop. I spent years trying to protect myself from losing you. A painful laugh escaped him. And I ended up making you feel like you were the one who wasn't chosen. Noah didn't speak. I never wanted you to feel like an imposter in my life. Tate's voice cracked. I never wanted you to feel like you were just waiting for me to decide if you mattered. The silence between them was enormous. Because you do matter. Noah looked away. Then why couldn't you tell me? Tate had no answer. And that was the hardest part. Because Noah wasn't asking for a perfect explanation. He wasn't asking Tate to rewrite 8 years. He just wanted the truth. The thing Tate had kept locked away. The thing he had been afraid to say. The heavy downpour surrounded them, rain pouring over Noah and Tate until there was no difference between tears and weather anymore. Neither of them moved. Neither of them walked away. Noah finally spoke. Why can't you just tell me, Tate? His voice wasn't angry. That was what made it hurt. It was exhausted. Why can't you just say it? Tate looked at him, unable to answer. I don't want you to have to wake up, Noe. Noah laughed. I am already awake, Tate. When we were younger, Noah continued, boys our age didn't act the way we did. The rain fell harder. And don't tell me we were just buddies. Tate flinched. Don't tell me it was just some strange circumstance or that it didn't mean anything. Noah shook his head. Because I'm not blind. His voice trembled. 26-year-old men don't sleep together and then pretend it doesn't mean something. They haven't shared a house for years. They don't build routines. They don't know every little thing about each other. They don't become the person someone calls first when life falls apart. Tate looked down. For some reason. Noah swallowed. You kept me. The words were quiet. And I don't know why. Tate's expression tightened. I don't know why you needed me close, but you couldn't tell me what I was to you. Noah wiped rain from his face, even though it did nothing. And that's the part I can't understand. He looked directly at Tate. Is it because you don't know? A pause. Or is it because you do know, and you're afraid of what happens if you admit it? Tate went still. It feels like one of two things. Noah's voice lowered. Either you won't grow up. He stopped, choosing his words carefully. Or something inside you keeps you from imagining a life where we aren't attached to each other. Tate's face showed pain. But honestly, Tate. Noah looked away. I don't care anymore. That hurt more than anger would have. I'm tired of trying to solve a puzzle where I'm the only one looking for the missing pieces. He took a breath. So, I'm going to live with whatever answer you decide to give the world. Tate stared at him. You want everyone to think we're buddies. Noah nodded slowly. Fine. You want our friends to buy us as friends. Tate flinched. Fine. You want to call us brothers. He looked down. I can live with that. The rain continued falling. You can tell anyone whatever you believe, whatever you think we are. Noah's voice became softer. But you're not fooling me. Tate looked up. Noah. No. Noah shook his head. I'm not saying that to hurt you, I'm saying it because I know you. He stepped closer. I know there is something here, I know there is something you've spent years refusing to name. His eyes filled. And I can accept that you might never give it a name. A pause. But I can't keep pretending I don't see it. Tate stood frozen in the rain. Because Noah wasn't asking him to confess something. He wasn't demanding a label. He was asking for honesty. And that was the one thing Tate had spent years being afraid to give him. I'm not asking you to tell everyone. Noah's voice rose over the storm. Whatever you tell me is completely off the record, Tate. Tate stared at him. I'm not asking you to go to Susie, I'm not asking you to call Andrew, I'm not asking you to explain yourself to your parents or anyone else. Noah shook his head. But I'm done with you lying to me. Tate flinched. You can lie to our friends. Noah. You can lie to your mother. The rain poured between them. You can lie to your father, you can lie to Uncle Tim. Tate's face tightened. You can tell them whatever story makes you comfortable. Noah's voice cracked. You can say we're just two boys who met in preschool, two people who have known each other for 22 years, two friends who happen to live together. He looked at Tate. You can call it platonic, you can call it unusual, you can call it something nobody else understands. A bitter laugh escaped Noah. But your lies are made of glass, Tate. Tate went still. They might look solid from far away. Noah stepped closer. But when I touch them, they crack. Tate swallowed. And I don't want any part of that anymore. Noah. I'm done with the little lies, the white lies, the half-truths, the way you explain things away until everyone else starts questioning themselves. Tate looked hurt. You tell Susie she's imagining things. Noah's voice became louder. You tell people they're reading too much into it, tell me one person. Tate blinked. What? Tell me one person you've ever known, one person you've ever read about in a book, one example anywhere. Noah's voice trembled. Of a relationship that looks like ours. Tate opened his mouth but nothing came out. And don't tell me everyone does this. Noah. Don't tell me all straight men sleep on top of each other. Tate looked away. Because I don't know a single person who does that. The rain hammered against the ground. Not one straight man I've ever known. Tate, I know the difference between friendship and pretending something isn't there because you're afraid of what it means. Tate's jaw tightened. Stop. Admit it, Tate. Noah's voice cut through the rain. Not loud. Not hysterical. Just exhausted. Our relationship is a fragile glass house. Tate looked at him, his face already wounded. You think my friends don't see it? Noah shook his head. The questions, the looks, the way people pause before they ask about us. He laughed bitterly. The explanations, the justifications. His eyes locked onto Tate's. The way you convince everyone that they're imagining things. Tate flinched. Maybe you're the only person who actually believes it. Noah. But I don't. The rain ran down Tate's face as he stood frozen. You can make a fool out of everyone else if you want. Noah's voice sharpened. You can make a fool out of our friends, you can make a fool out of your family. A pause. But you're not making a fool out of me. Tate looked away. I've known since my 18th birthday that what we have is something different. Noah's jaw tightened. I've known for years. I'm not stupid, Tate. His voice broke slightly. I'm really not that dumb. Tate looked like he wanted to say something, but Noah kept going. But somehow you keep acting like I am. Noah, that's not. You can apologize, you can tell me you're sorry, you can unlock my bedroom door, you can sleep next to me. You can sleep on top of me. Tate went still. You can hold me when I'm upset, you can let me take care of you when you're scared. Noah shook his head. But none of that changes the thing that hurts, the moment someone asks about us. He let out a breath full of frustration. You disappear. Tate's eyes filled. You make this whole thing sound like it's nothing. Noah's voice changed, becoming an imitation of Tate's familiar explanation. Oh, you're reading too much into it, you know, we're just close, we're just two boys who grew up together, that's all we are. Noah dropped the imitation and stared at him. That's the answer you've given everyone. The rain pounded around them. That's the answer you've given yourself. Tate swallowed. And maybe that's all you want it to be. Noah's voice softened, but the hurt remained. But do you know what the worst part is? Tate looked at him. It's not that you chose friendship, it's not that you chose a different definition, it's that you keep asking me to live inside something you refuse to acknowledge. Tate's breathing became uneven. All these years. Noah shook his head. All these years I've been standing in this house, in this life, waiting for you to tell me what it is. He looked toward his car. And you keep telling me it's nothing. A long silence passed. Tate finally spoke, his voice barely audible. I never thought it was nothing. Noah looked back at him. Then why did you keep calling it that? Tate had no answer. Because that was the part he couldn't escape. He had spent years protecting the relationship by refusing to name it. But in doing so, he had made Noah feel like the relationship itself was something shameful. And standing there in the rain, Tate realized that the thing he was most afraid of losing was the very thing he had been slowly hurting. No. Noah's voice broke through the rain. I'm done pretending I'm stupid. I'm done letting you make me feel like I'm crazy for noticing what is right in front of me. Tate's eyes filled. I never wanted to make you feel stupid. Then stop treating me like I am. The words landed. Tate looked devastated. I don't know what you want me to say. Noah shook his head. That's the problem. Tate stepped forward. No, you don't understand. Then explain it. Tate froze. I've spent years trying to understand you. Noah's voice softened. Just once, Tate, try to let me understand you. Tate looked down at the soaked ground. I was scared. Noah waited. I was scared that if I admitted what this was, Tate swallowed, I would lose it. Noah's expression changed slightly. Because. Tate looked up. Because numbing something changes it. The rain continued to fall. And if I said the wrong thing, if I admitted something I couldn't take back. His voice cracked. I thought you would leave. Noah stared at him. Tate, I've spent years staying because you mattered. Tate closed his eyes. I know. Then why did you keep making me feel like I was the one who wasn't allowed to know? Tate had no answer. And for once he didn't try to invent one. He just stood there in the rain, finally facing the thing he had avoided for years. Tate stood in the rain, staring somewhere past Noah. For a moment, it looked like he was trying to hold himself together. Then he lifted his hands and ran them through his soaked hair. The gesture was small, almost childlike. And something about it made Noah's chest tighten. Tate's entire demeanor changed. The anger that had been there moments before disappeared. The fight left his face. The certainty. The defensiveness. All of it faded. He suddenly looked younger. Not like the man who had been arguing in the rain, but like the boy Noah had known years ago, the 15-year-old boy who didn't know how to explain what he felt, who only knew that something hurt and that he didn't know what to do with it. It was like the Tate standing in front of Noah now was completely different from the Tate who had been there moments before. The walls were gone. What was left was fear. I can't, it's killing me to feel like this, whatever this is between us is unnatural. His voice was quieter. I've tried to get over you, but I can't. Whenever I look in the mirror, you're there looking back at me, unlike what I need to forget. Tate looked down, his hands falling back to his sides. I tried in vain to understand how these feelings I feel are destroying us. The rain poured around them. This is not right. He swallowed. What we have, what we did. He shook his head. There is no way that any of this makes sense. I can't justify it as comfort or, God forbid, as love. It's so wrong. Noah watched him carefully, seeing how much effort it took for Tate to even say the words. And I can't justify it to myself. God, we have to stop. A pause. I don't want to have sex with you anymore. Tate's voice cracked. We can't do this wicked thing anymore. I don't want to do us anymore. He looked away. It makes me physically sick in my gut. His breathing became uneven. It makes me want to throw up. A long silence. I want to turn a gun on myself whenever you come near me because you touching me makes me evil. Tate cried. And you know why. Noah didn't move. Don't touch me, you've made me a criminal and I won't do it anymore. Tate stepped back. Don't come near me again. His voice sharpened, but the fear underneath it was obvious. Take your fucking hands off me and act like my, Tate sobbed, and don't fucking tell anyone. Then his voice changed. Softened. Almost desperate. Don't tell Noah, please, the truth about us would destroy him. The sentence hung there. Noah felt something twist inside him. Because Tate wasn't talking like someone who was angry. I have Noah. He sounded like someone who was terrified of what would happen if the truth existed outside this moment. I have a great life, thank you for that. Tate wiped his face though the rain kept falling. His voice broke. And I don't fucking need this, I don't need you anymore. If you ever loved me, you'd keep your hands off me. For a second, he looked like he was trying to convince himself more than anyone else. I need to wash my hair, so get the fuck out of my shower before I scream. Then Tate turned around. He walked back toward the house. The door opened. Then closed. Noah remained standing in the rain. And the one thing he couldn't stop thinking about was how different Tate had looked at the end. Not cold. Not detached. Not relieved. Young. Scared. Terrified of something. Terrified of someone. Like he had just confessed something to himself that he wasn't ready to hear. Noah stayed outside, staring at the closed door. The rain kept falling, but his mind was somewhere else. He kept replaying Tate's words. Don't tell Noah, please. That was the part he couldn't get past. Noah frowned. Because if Tate was talking to him, why had Tate said that? Why would Tate look directly at him and beg him not to tell Noah? The contradiction bothered him more than anything else. Noah knew Tate was overwhelmed, he knew Tate was scared, he knew Tate wasn't acting like himself. But that sentence felt different. It felt like Tate wasn't speaking to the person standing in front of him. It felt like Tate had slipped into another place entirely. Was he talking to me? Noah wondered. Or was he talking to someone else? Because if Tate truly meant Noah, the Noah standing in the rain, the person who had known him for 22 years, then the request didn't make sense. Noah already knew. Tate had just told him. But Tate had said it like Noah was someone else. Like there was another Noah who could find out. Another Noah who could judge him. Another Noah whose opinion mattered more than the person actually standing there. Noah rubbed his face. Maybe that was the strangest part. Tate wasn't looking at him like someone he was trying to convince. He was looking at him like someone he was afraid of disappointing. And those were two very different things. Noah thought about the way Tate had changed. The anger had vanished. The arguments had vanished. The person left behind looked younger, almost like he had forgotten he was an adult and was suddenly just a frightened kid trying to make a terrible feeling disappear. Noah exhaled. "Who were you talking to, Tate?" The question disappeared into the rain. Because Noah had spent years wondering what Tate wouldn't say. But now he wondered something else. Maybe Tate wasn't refusing to answer Noah. Maybe Tate was trapped in a conversation with himself. And Noah had only been standing there, watching him lose. Noah sat in the driver's seat, staring through the windshield as the rain continued to fall. After a few minutes he called Susie. She answered almost immediately. "Noah, I need to tell you something." Susie went quiet. "What happened?" Noah took a breath and repeated Tate's words. Not just the anger. Not just the fear. The part that kept bothering him was especially what Tate said. "Don't tell Noah, please, the truth about us would destroy him." When he finished, Susie didn't answer right away. "Noah. What?" She sounded thoughtful. "I'm wondering if there is another possibility here." Noah frowned. "What do you mean?" "His seizure." Noah looked down. "You think that's connected?" "I'm not saying I know that it is," Susie said carefully. "But seizures and the recovery afterward can sometimes affect how people think, process emotions, remember things, or experience confusion." Noah stayed silent. Susie continued. "And given what you described, the sudden change, the way he seemed younger, the way he was talking like he wasn't fully responding to you." She paused. "Is it possible that, in that moment, he wasn't fully grounded in who he was talking to?" Noah's stomach tightened. "You mean?" "I mean, it's possible he thought he was talking to someone else." The word sat heavily between them. Maybe someone from his past, maybe someone connected to those feelings he was struggling with. Noah looked toward the house. "Maybe he thought I was one of his lovers." Susie sighed. "Maybe Noe. I'm not saying that's what happened, Susie. I know. But I am saying the sentence that stood out to you, 'Don't tell Noah,' doesn't make sense if he knew you were Noah and was fully present in that moment." Noah rubbed his forehead. "That's what I keep thinking. Because either he was speaking to himself or he was speaking from a place where he wasn't fully connecting the person in front of him with the person he was afraid of disappointing." Noah was quiet. "He looked terrified," he said. Susie's voice softened. "Then maybe the most important thing is not assuming he meant to hurt you." A pause. "But also, don't ignore that it hurt you." Noah looked back at the house. "I don't know what happened." "No," Susie agreed, "and neither does Tate right now, maybe." The rain continued against the windows. "But Noah," Susie added, "when you talk to him again, don't just ask what he meant. Ask him if he remembers the conversation." Noah froze. "Because if he doesn't..." Susie trailed off. "Then you may be dealing with something very different than a simple argument." Noah finally walked back inside. He was drenched. Water dripped from his hair, his clothes, and the ends of his sleeves. He looked like he had walked straight out of a storm and forgotten that he was supposed to come back inside. Tate looked up from the kitchen. He was sitting at the table with a bagel in his hand. And he smiled. Not a nervous smile. Not an angry one. A normal smile. "What the hell happened to you?" Tate asked. "You look terrible." Noah just stared at him. Tate took another bite of his bagel. "When did you go out in the rain?" The question stopped Noah cold. For a moment he didn't answer. "What?" Tate looked confused. "When did you go outside? It's pouring." Noah stared at him. "Tate. What?" Noah's eyes moved over him. The wet clothes. The bagel. The casual expression. "You don't remember." Tate frowned. "Remember what?" Noah felt a chill that had nothing to do with being soaked. "You just said you haven't been out in the rain yet." "Because I haven't." Noah slowly shook his head. Tate, we were outside. Tate blinked. No, we haven't. We were outside. Noah's voice became quieter. 10 minutes ago. Tate looked genuinely confused. No, we weren't. Noah stared at him. The memory was immediate. The driveway. The rain. Tate running after him. Tate was standing there with his hair soaked, telling him he couldn't do it anymore. Tate is telling him not to touch him. Tate is telling him not to tell Noah. Noah's stomach dropped. You were standing in the rain with me. Tate's expression changed. Not defensive. Not angry. Just uncertain. Noah. You were soaked. Tate looked down at his own clothes. Then back at Noah. I haven't been outside. The room became silent. Noah suddenly felt like he was looking at two different versions of Tate. The Tate who had just stood outside with him was overwhelmed and terrified. And the Tate sitting in front of him now, eating a bagel like nothing had happened. Noah swallowed. Tate. What? Noah didn't know how to ask the question. Because suddenly it wasn't about the argument anymore. It was about whether Tate remembered it at all. Do you remember talking to me outside? Tate stared at him. Outside. Noah nodded slowly. In the rain. Tate's face changed slightly. A flicker of confusion crossed his expression. No. And that one word scared Noah more than anything Tate had said earlier. Because Noah finally understood why Tate had said, "Don't tell Noah." Maybe Tate hadn't been talking to him. Maybe, in that moment, Tate wasn't even aware that Noah was the person standing in front of him. Noah stood there still trying to process what he was seeing. Tate moved around the kitchen as if nothing unusual had happened. Like they hadn't just stood in the rain. Like Noah hadn't watched him break down. Like Tate hadn't looked him in the eyes and said things Noah knew he would never forget. I have a meeting in half an hour with my mother at the mansion, Tate said casually. Noah blinked. A meeting. Yeah. Tate grabbed his things. We're discussing an upcoming party. Noah just stared at him. It was almost impossible to comprehend. Tate was talking about schedules and plans, completely unaware that minutes earlier their entire relationship had felt like it was collapsing. You need to get out of those clothes, Tate said, looking at Noah. His tone was familiar. Almost affectionate. You'll catch a cold. Noah didn't respond. The last thing I need is a sneezing Noah when I get back. There it was. The ordinary Tate. The Tate who worried about him. The Tate who noticed small things. The Tate who acted like Noah being sick would personally inconvenience him because he cared. Then Tate continued. We'll talk about how you want to discuss my dead relatives. We haven't talked about it yet, and when I get home, we'll nail down what you want to discuss. Noah felt a strange disconnect. Tate and Noah had already discussed this conversation, and yet Tate acted as if it had never happened before they went out into the rain an hour ago. If you want to talk about Joey or anyone else, then I guess I'll have to. A pause. But we'll talk about it. Tate picked up his keys. You said you wanted to talk about it tonight, and we'll do that. Noah watched him. Because that was the strangest part. Tate thought the conversation had never happened. To him, the conversation was still just a plan for later. I have to go. Then Tate left. The front door closed. Noah remained standing in the kitchen. For several moments he couldn't move. Because Tate had just walked away from a conversation that had changed everything for Noah. But for Tate, it had never happened. Noah thought back. Tate had mentioned years ago that he sometimes lost pieces of time. Memory gaps. Moments he couldn't fully account for. At the time, Noah had never imagined it could look like this. He had assumed it meant forgetting little things. Appointments. Conversations. Details. Not an entire emotional confrontation. Not standing in the rain. Not words that had left Noah shaken. Noah sat down slowly. Maybe Tate hadn't been lying. Maybe he hadn't been hiding the answer. Maybe he genuinely didn't remember. But that raised a different question. If Tate didn't remember saying those things, who had Noah been talking to in the rain? Who had Tate been talking to in the rain? And what did that mean for everything Tate had revealed when he wasn't fully himself? Noah waited until the front door closed behind Tate. A few seconds later, he picked up his phone and called Andrew. The call connected after 2 rings. "Hello," Andrew said. "I'm between patients, what's going on?" Noah took a deep breath. "I just had 2 conversations with Tate." He paused, trying to make sense of it himself. "And he doesn't remember having either of them." Andrew was silent. "We had them 10 minutes ago." Noah could hear movement on the other end of the line. Then a pen clicked against a desk. Andrew had put it down. His voice changed. "What happened?" Noah leaned against the kitchen counter. "I don't even know how to explain this. Start at the beginning. I confronted Tate about his bullshit concerning our relationship." Andrew didn't interrupt. "We talked in the house first. I told him how hurt I was that every time I tried to grieve Joey or talk about the people I've lost, he shut the conversation down." He responded, "Yeah." Noah swallowed. "Then I walked outside. It was pouring. He followed me." Andrew listened quietly. "And then?" Noah hesitated. "He changed." "What do you mean?" "I don't mean emotionally." Noah searched for the right words. "I mean everything. The way he spoke. The way he held himself. The look on his face. He suddenly looked younger." Andrew frowned on the other end of the phone. "Younger? Like I wasn't talking to the same Tate anymore." Noah closed his eyes. "We stood in the rain, Andrew. And it felt like..." He struggled to explain it. "It felt like he was talking through me. Through you. Like I wasn't the person he thought he was talking to." Andrew didn't say anything. He said things that didn't make sense. "He told me not to tell Noah." Andrew inhaled sharply. "What?" "He looked right at me and said, 'Don't tell Noah, please.'" A long silence followed. And then he walked back into the house. Noah looked toward the wet footprints still visible on the kitchen floor. I came in a few minutes later. He was sitting in the kitchen eating a bagel. Andrew waited. He was dripping wet. Water was literally dripping off his clothes onto my floor. And he looked at me and asked. Noah laughed once, though there was no humor in it. "When did you go out in the rain?" Andrew said nothing. He told me he hadn't been outside. Noah's voice became quieter. "He was soaked, Andrew. I saw him standing in the rain. I argued with him in the rain. He followed me into the rain. But he kept insisting he had never gone outside." Andrew finally spoke. "Did he seem like he was pretending?" "No." Noah answered immediately. "That's what's terrifying. He seemed genuinely confused. He apologized for what happened last night and said we'd have our conversation about Joey tonight." Andrew was quiet for several seconds. "So from his perspective, he thinks today's conversation never happened." Noah nodded even though Andrew couldn't see him. "Exactly." Another long silence. Finally Andrew spoke carefully. "Noah, I can't explain what happened over the phone. I know. But whatever this is." Andrew's voice was measured. "It's not something I dismiss." He took a slow breath. "The change in his behavior, the apparent gap in his memory, and the confusion you described are all things that deserve to be taken seriously." Noah closed his eyes. "I thought I was losing my mind." "I don't think you're describing someone who's simply forgotten part of an argument," Andrew said quietly. "Whether this is related to his recent seizure, another medical issue, or something else, I can't say based on one phone call." Andrew paused. "But I do think he should be evaluated." Noah looked toward the front door. "I was hoping you'd tell me I was imagining it." Andrew answered without hesitation. "No. I think you believe exactly what you experienced. And I think Tate deserves the chance to find out why he doesn't remember experiencing it, too." Andrew was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm and careful. "Noah, I can't diagnose him." Noah didn't interrupt. "First of all, he's my friend." Andrew sighed. "I can't take him on as a patient because of the dual relationship complication. I'm not objective, and ethically I shouldn't be trying to diagnose someone I'm personally involved with." Noah nodded to himself. "I figured you'd say that. And second," Andrew continued, "I've never actually seen him have one of these episodes. The only thing I have is your description. He paused. So I have to be very careful about what I say. Noah leaned against the counter. So what do you think? I don't know. Andrew answered honestly. But I can tell you there are several possibilities. He spoke slowly. If this is a memory problem related to his recent seizure. A pause. People can sometimes experience confusion after seizures. They may have gaps in memory. They may not remember conversations. In some cases, people can even have seizures while they're standing or carrying on simple behavior, and to someone watching, it isn't immediately obvious what's happening. Noah listened carefully. If that happened, Andrew continued, it's possible he became disoriented afterward. It's possible he wasn't fully aware of where he was. It's possible he misunderstood who he was talking to. Andrew emphasized the uncertainty in his voice. I'm not saying that's what happened. I'm saying it's one possibility. Noah swallowed. And if it wasn't the seizure? Andrew took a breath. There are other possibilities. For example, someone under extreme emotional stress can sometimes dissociate. They can feel detached from what's happening around them. They may later have little or no memory of part of the experience. Again, Andrew was careful. But dissociation has many causes and memory problems can have many causes. I can't tell you which, if any, applies here. Noah looked toward the front door. He looked like a completely different person. I heard you describe that. And that concerns me. Andrew's voice remained measured. But concern isn't the same as a diagnosis. What should I do? I'd encourage Tate to tell the doctor who has been treating him about exactly what happened today. Andrew didn't hesitate. The memory gap. The apparent confusion. The recent seizure. The whole sequence. Those are things a neurologist or the physician managing his seizures would want to know. Noah was quiet. So I'm not crazy. Andrew gave a small sigh. I think you witnessed something that genuinely alarmed you. And I think Tate, by your account, experienced something he doesn't remember. Those are observations. The job now is to find out why, not to jump to conclusions. Noah nodded slowly. Okay. And Noah? Yes. Until someone evaluates him, don't assume you know the explanation. Whether it's related to the seizure, stress, or something else, let the people treating him sort that out. Noah looked out the rain-speckled window. For now, Andrew said quietly, just write down exactly what happened while it's still fresh. Details like the timeline, what he said, what he remembered, and what he didn't remember can be very helpful later. Noah reached for a notepad on the counter. For once, he said softly, I wish I had less to remember. A week later, Noah finally got the answer he had been chasing. After insisting that Tate keep his appointments, Noah had gone with him to the neurologist and several other medical specialists. They reviewed the recent seizure. They discussed the memory lapse. They performed neurological testing. They ruled out anything they thought might explain what had happened that day. Noah sat silently as the last physician closed Tate's chart. I know this isn't the answer you were expecting, the doctor said, but we have not found evidence of a neurological disorder that would explain these episodes. Noah felt his stomach sink. So, from our evaluation, there is no indication of an ongoing neurological disease, brain injury, or other condition that explains the behavior you described. The doctor spoke carefully. His seizure appears to have been an isolated medical event, and his current neurological examination and testing are reassuring. Noah looked at Tate before turning back to the doctor. What about the memory? We can't say with certainty why he didn't remember that conversation, the doctor replied. Memory can sometimes be affected temporarily around the time of a seizure or during periods of intense stress, but based on the testing we've completed, we are not finding evidence of a persistent neurological impairment. The room fell quiet. The doctor continued. One thing I did notice during our conversations with Tate is that he appears emotionally younger in certain situations. Noah looked up. There are moments where his emotional responses seem significantly less mature than his intellectual abilities. The doctor chose his words with care. Some clinicians might describe that pattern informally as arrested emotional development. He immediately clarified. That isn't by itself a medical diagnosis, nor does it explain every aspect of what you've described. Noah nodded slowly. So, there's nothing physically wrong. Not based on what we found. Nothing psychological. The doctor shook his head. We did not identify evidence of a psychiatric disorder during our evaluation. If concerns continue, a mental health assessment could provide additional perspective. But nothing we've seen points to a major psychiatric illness. And biologically, again, nothing from our examination suggests an underlying biological condition that accounts for everything you described. The doctor offered a small smile toward Tate. Overall, he's in excellent physical health. He glanced at the chart. Cardiovascularly healthy, strong, fit. He closed the folder. By every objective measure, he's one of the healthiest young men we've examined. Noah sat back in his chair. It should have been reassuring. Instead, it left him with a different kind of fear. If there was no neurological explanation, if there was no medical condition causing it, then the questions that had haunted him in the rain were still unanswered. And this time there wasn't a scan or a specialist left to ask. The physician closed the last set of results and looked at Noah and Tate. We also ran testing to look for evidence of epilepsy. Noah leaned forward. And we did not find evidence that Tate has epilepsy. The physician spoke carefully. Based on the testing we've completed, we have not recorded epileptic activity, and we have no objective evidence that the event you described was an epileptic seizure. Noah glanced at Tate. So what happened? The physician folded his hands. I can't tell you with certainty. He paused. But I can tell you what I'm considering. The episodes you've described appear to occur during periods of significant emotional distress. He looked toward Tate. Stress can produce a wide range of physical and behavioral symptoms. In some people, those symptoms can resemble seizures even when they are not caused by the abnormal electrical activity we see in epilepsy. He chose his next words carefully. I also noticed what I would describe as significant arrested emotional development. He immediately clarified. That's an observation about emotional functioning, not an explanation by itself. Noah nodded. So you think it's emotional? I think emotional stress may be contributing, the physician replied, but I can't say that explains everything. He looked back at the chart. There are also rare conditions that can cause seizure-like episodes without showing the typical findings we associate with epilepsy. Some have genetic components, and some are uncommon enough that routine testing doesn't always provide an answer. He shrugged slightly. At this point, I don't have enough evidence to identify a specific cause. Noah frowned. So what happens now? If you want to continue investigating, there are additional options. The physician counted them off. We could arrange a prolonged video EEG or an inpatient monitoring study, including a sleep study if appropriate, to see whether an episode can be captured while brain activity is being recorded. He continued. I would also recommend an evaluation by a psychiatrist or neuropsychologist. That isn't because I think Tate is crazy. It's because those specialists are trained to assess conditions where stress, memory, emotion, and behavior interact in complicated ways. He smiled reassuringly. Sometimes ruling things out is just as valuable as finding something. Noah looked at Tate. Would that be expensive? The physician gave a small smile. It can be. He glanced toward Tate. But from what I understand, cost is unlikely to be the limiting factor in Tate's case. He closed the file. My advice is straightforward. If these episodes continue, don't ignore them. Document when they happen, what occurred beforehand, how long they last, and what Tate remembers afterward. He stood. We may not have an answer today. But if another episode occurs, the information you collect could help us determine whether we're dealing with a rare neurological condition, a stress-related phenomenon, or something else entirely. Noah nodded slowly. The physician had ruled out many of the possibilities Noah had feared. Yet somehow, the uncertainty that remained felt heavier than any diagnosis would have. On May 12, Tate was admitted overnight to the sleep center for an observational sleep study. Noah sat in the observation room behind the glass while the sleep technicians quietly monitored the screens. Colored lines traced Tate's brain activity, heart rate, breathing, oxygen levels, muscle movement, and rapid eye movements as dozens of sensors recorded everything throughout the night. The problem became obvious almost immediately. Tate wasn't used to sleeping alone. He never really fell asleep. Hour after hour, the monitors showed him lying awake. His eyes wandered around the unfamiliar room. He rolled from one side of the bed to the other. Every time the plumbing rattled somewhere inside the building, Tate's entire body jumped. If a shadow shifted across the wall from someone walking past the hallway, he pulled the blanket over his head. The mattress visibly trembled. Noah watched helplessly through the observation window. The technicians exchanged quiet glances but continued recording. As the night wore on, Tate became more distressed. His breathing grew quicker. He clutched the blankets tightly. Then, after another loud noise echoed through the pipes, his body suddenly stiffened. His arms drew inward, his breathing became irregular, and he began shaking in a way that resembled the episode Noah had witnessed before. The technicians immediately entered the room while continuing to monitor the recording. Noah stood from his chair instinctively, his heart racing, but remained behind the observation room glass as staff responded according to protocol. The event was captured on the sleep study equipment. Whatever had happened, this time it had been recorded in detail. For the first time, the physicians would have objective data to compare Tate's physical movements with his brain activity during one of the episodes. Noah found himself hoping for something he never thought he would hope for. An answer. Whatever it was. After the episode subsided, the sleep technician spoke to Tate in a calm, reassuring voice until his breathing gradually slowed. "It's okay," the technician said gently, "you're safe." Tate looked frightened and disoriented. As carefully as possible, the technician reattached the monitoring wires that had come loose during the episode, making sure they were secure without causing him any discomfort. Once everything was connected again, the recording resumed. The rest of the night was uneventful in one sense. Tate never fell asleep. He lay awake for hours. Every few minutes his body would twitch. Sometimes it was only a finger. Sometimes his shoulder would jerk. Other times, his entire body would tense for a moment before relaxing again. He seemed unable to settle. Several times, tears rolled silently down his cheeks. Then, barely above a whisper, he called out into the dark. "Anoe." Minutes later, he said it again. "Anoe." The room was otherwise quiet. Behind the observation window, Noah felt helpless listening to him. The sleep technicians continued their work professionally. One technician watched the live recordings on several computer monitors, following the brainwave patterns, eye movements, heart rhythm, breathing, muscle activity, and other physiological signals as they streamed across the screen. Another technician carefully documented the night's events, noting the times of Tate's distress, his movements, his vocalizations, and the episode that had prompted staff intervention. Neither technician interrupted the recording unless Tate's safety required it. Every twitch, every awakening, every call for Noah, every change on the monitors. It was all being recorded in the hope that, by morning, the physicians would have enough information to better understand what Tate had experienced. The following afternoon, Noah and Tate sat together in the sleep physician's office. The doctor had a thick folder open on the desk, along with several pages of graphs from the overnight study. He looked at Tate first. "I've gone over all of the data we collected during your sleep study." He folded his hands. "There are several findings I'd like to discuss with you." Tate nodded quietly. "First, your insomnia concerns me." The doctor turned one of the pages so they could see the timeline. "During the study, you spent the vast majority of the night awake. Despite having an appropriate opportunity to sleep, you were unable to initiate sustained sleep." He pointed to the recording. "I'm also seeing multiple signs consistent with significant sleep deprivation." Noah glanced at Tate. The doctor continued. In addition, there are repeated markers of physiological hyperarousal. In other words, your nervous system remained unusually alert throughout the night rather than settling into a normal sleep state. He flipped to another graph. Your sleep was highly fragmented. The brief periods where you appeared to drift towards sleep were repeatedly interrupted before you could establish a normal sleep pattern. Tate looked down. I'm also seeing abnormalities in the portions of the recording where REM sleep would ordinarily be expected. The doctor paused. Because you slept so little, it's difficult to fully evaluate your REM sleep architecture, but what we did record was irregular enough that I would like to investigate it further. He tapped another page. Finally, your brain activity remained unusually active for someone attempting to sleep. He looked directly at Tate. Your mind did not appear to settle. The doctor chose his next words carefully. You also demonstrated significant distress while sleeping alone. He referred to his notes. You repeatedly scanned the room, startled easily at ordinary environmental sounds, and appeared unable to relax in an unfamiliar sleeping environment. Tate shifted uncomfortably in his chair. The episode overnight occurred while you were still awake. Based on the recordings we obtained, we did not see the pattern of abnormal electrical activity.